Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. We're really glad that you're an audience today, whether you're watching us live or if you're watching us later on watching the live video, or if you're listening on a podcast. We're really glad that you decided to join us. We have a couple of comments already. Joe Conjal says, hi, Rob and Joan.
Joe.
Hello, Joe. How are you doing tonight?
Welcome aboard.
Marjorie Deering. Hi, everyone. Pizza and podcast tonight.
Oh.
Let the fun begin. Oh,
Pizza,
Marjorie.
pass the pizza.
Yeah.
Share it. Come on.
Invite us over.
Goodness gracious.
If Joy York is in the audience, I'd like to hear what happened with the eclipse in her town, because they were pretty much shutting everything down.
Yeah.
Last I heard, because it was in the path of totality.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to remind everybody about Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Go to www.wdjy.com, or if you live in the Atlanta area, 99.1 FM Atlanta, and listen to our shows. That'd be weird. Anyway, Saturdays at 5:30 p.m. episode rewind. Every Saturday, 5:30 p.m., just like clockwork. And then next week, next Wednesday, 7 o'clock, author and director R.J. Eastwood, also known as Robert Emery, will be back on again. He was on last year, I believe. He has a new book out. He's a multi-genre author. And so that sounds like it's going to be fun. I want to talk to everybody about the book signing. And it's San Leon book signing in Southeast Texas, around the Houston area, Pier 6 Restaurant. They still need some authors. If you're available and would like to join, get a hold of George and George Dismukes at phone number is 281-229-0775, or you can email him at mayanartintl@yahoo.com. That's mayanartintl@yahoo.com. And he's also got some T-shirts for sale for anybody that would like to order one to promote the book signing. If you're an author there, you might want to get one to wear to the book signing. That'd be a good idea. Just contact George at those places that we just showed you, the email, or call him and order one. I think it's $18 for women's size and $20 for men's.
It's pretty.
Yeah, it's a nice looking shirt.
Anyway, we have a few comments here. Joyce says she hears. So how was it? Did you see it? Did you see the eclipse? And was it crazy in your town?
Hi, Joy.
Joe Conchal said, I had broccoli, cheese, and chicken soup. It was scrumptious.
Scrumptious. Well, that does sound good, actually.
It does. And George, who we just said is, having the book blowout, says, out of the darkness into the light. He's been out of electricity all day because of all the high winds there near Houston.
Hi, George, Nadine. Woof, woof.
to Daisy and Gizmo
Yes.
are here miraculously. Joy York says she'll be there.
She's going to be at the book signing, so
blowout.
that'll be cool.
Joe Conjal said we should get the Magnolia Bluff authors to San Leon next year.
That's what
I
we were
vote
thinking.
for that, Joe. I
Yeah.
say that. I know George would love that. That all 12 of us.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Well, we have some news tonight. Right after this show on the radio station, WLFE DB Radio, that sponsors our show, that's produces our show. They have a new show, and it starts at 8 o'clock right after our show.
So guess what?
Guess what? We're going to be
For the
ending.
first time in
8
3 years, we're ending at 8 o'clock because
Right.
there's a show.
Their show's
following
called Paranormal Unplugged, so it should be interesting. And you'll watch that on Facebook, on the WLFE DB Radio Facebook or YouTube channels.
And Paul Hollis says, sneaking in. Hey,
Okay.
Paul.
We won't call attention to you, Paul.
At all.
Yeah.
And Paul Rushworth
Paul
Brown
Rushmore.
says, hello.
Hello from down under.
Sunny Sydney. Good morning, Paul. And Joyce said, the only weird things were the birds chirped like crazy and the ducks came out on the lake after it went dark. Yeah, we heard that. Did you go out and look at it with glasses?
It'd only be more weird if it was the other way around, if the ducks started chirping and the birds came up out of the lake.
Oh, Lord.
That would be
Paul Rushworth Brown says, good morning. All right, let's move along.
All
Could
right.
we please bring our guest
Well,
on? So,
in just a minute. We still have a
Okay.
little bit to talk about. Looking at this right here,
oh,
available for pre-order. You don't want to forget this. A Chance of a Ghost by none other than RC and JP Carter. That's us. And it's Magnolia Bluff Crime Chronicles, book 23. You can get us on Amazon. It's available for pre-order now, and it'll be released actually on the 20th of April.
mhm.
And what else we got? Oh, wanted to mention Linda Birtle's book, book 22's Girlfriend Retreat. That's still out there. That's the book right before ours.
And also, CW's book was the first book.
And of this year,
Yeah.
CW's book.
Oops, see, I put you on the spot.
Yeah, you
there.
put me on the spot trying to remember.
Let's see. Joy York says, yes, it was fantastic. They looked at it, so they got to see the eclipse and the diamond ring. And Joe Contra said, the paranormal show needs to promote a Chance of a Ghost.
There you go.
They should.
You
We
would
should
think
tell
so.
them that. Paul Rushworth Brown said, yay. Oh, Joy said, I pre-ordered. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Marjorie
So
Tierney
is
said
Marjorie.
they pre-ordered. Thank you.
Awesome.
That's
awesome.
wonderful. I know
All right.
Joe has also.
Well, I think our guest went home. No,
He's
no, he didn't.
probably thought he was
He
never
fell
gonna get on
asleep.
the
That's
show.
what he did. He's waiting back there very patiently. And
they
so
bring on.
let's bring in Larry now. Larry Freeland. Hello.
Larry.
Hello, how are y'all?
Good.
Good.
That
How
was
you
a
doing?
lot of news. Did you think you were never going to get on here?
Oh, I kept busy.
Oh, Joe Conjal said, CW, who mourns Electra?
Thank you, Joe. I remembered the Electra part, but I didn't want to bring the whole title out until you did.
Joe's younger than us. His memory hasn't gone yet. I'll give you 10, 15 years.
We've got
Joe.
the book, but you know.
We do. We own the book. Paul
Okay.
Rushworth Brown says, hello, Larry.
Hello, I'm glad to be with everybody that's out there.
Yeah.
Hope I have some good information to put out when we get started.
Oh, I think that you do.
I
Why
think
don't
you
you
do, too.
tell us a little bit about yourself and why you started writing? I think you people will be really interested.
Well, I was in the Army many years ago. Did 5 years in the military. Did a tour in Vietnam as a helicopter pilot with the 101st. In 71, came back, got out, went into the banking industry, where I had a really good career and retired from that early in 2000, and then did some other things in consulting positions, and then went on to teach college for 7 years, and then retired from that. And I've been fully retired now since I turned 65, and I'm well over 70 now. The question is, when did I get into writing? I fell into that. I brought up my military service real quick because when I came back, I wanted to forget about all that and just got out and put it behind me. And in the mid to late 80s, I'm a big movie buff, not much of a reader. I've become more of a reader the last 5 years, but I was a big movie buff, grew up around movies and thought I wanted to be an actor or be in the production end of it way back as a young man. And I saw this movie called Platoon. I imagine everybody that's been in our age group will remember that in the mid-late 80s. And that was the first movie I saw about Vietnam. And I came out of that theater. My wife was with me, and I looked at her, and it was a pretty shocking movie for me. And I thought, I think I'd just been back to Vietnam again. And I knew Oliver Stone was going to make 2 more movies about Vietnam. And I thought he did a pretty good job with Platoon and did a good job of capturing what it was like to be on the ground and what those fellows went through. And I thought it'd be neat if he would do a movie about helicopters, because I think there was a story there. And I'd really but buried all that stuff. And I wrote him a letter a couple months after I saw that movie, and I introduced myself, said, hey, I got an idea for a screenplay, and I understand you might be making another 2 movies. He came back to me with a letter a couple months later and said, I do, but I've already got one in post-production, not about helicopters. He didn't tell me at the time, but it was Born on the 4th of July with Tom Cruise. He said, my last one, I conceptualized it, but it doesn't involve helicopters either. He said, but your query letter's got a lot of good ideas. I'd recommend you hook up with somebody that's written screenplays or write one yourself or write yourself a book. He said, because you got a good story there. And I said, well, it was really great that he reached out to me like that. But I'm in the middle of my banking career. I'm married with young children, and I don't have time to do that. And it's just not my cup of tea or in my wheelhouse, so to speak, at that point in my life. So I just laid back and forgot about it. And then going into 91, 92, I had this story in my mind, and I thought, I think I'm going to take his advice. I'm going to try writing a screenplay, because I'm a movie guy. I'd never done that before, but I ended up writing a screenplay, and it was titled The Flying Pachyderms. And I was ready in about 91, 92, and I couldn't get an agent, and I didn't pick anybody up that wanted to pick me up about maybe producing it or running with it. So I wrote a query letter to 10 production companies out in Hollywood. 3 got back to me. All 3 read it. One of them, Built More Pictures, talked to me for a couple of months, almost optioned it from me. And they all liked it, but they didn't. And everybody that read it up to that point said, Larry, you really ought to turn this screenplay into a book. You could really probably have a really good book there, develop your characters and do these things and those things. And I was just burned out. I said, writing a screenplay was a lot of fun, but I've never done this kind of thing before. So I just packaged it up and put it away. And that was like maybe in 1993, 94, and forgot about it. Well, about 2018, 2019 comes around, and I'm still got this story in the back of my mind I wanted to tell about helicopter pilots in Vietnam at the end of the war, 1971. And I thought, well, what the heck? I went and researched how you write a screenplay. I read a couple of screenplays. I researched how to write a book. And then I just pulled all that stuff out. This is about 2020, just before COVID started to get serious. And I came up here to my office. I pulled everything out. I just shut the door, and I wrote the book called Chariots in the Sky. And it was an expansion of my screenplay, which was called The Flying Pachyderms. And then the book that you see there, that came out about 2.5, almost 3 years ago now. I was very fortunate. I was picked up by a Publish Authority, Frank Eastland, here in Atlanta and out in California. We got it out. It's done quite well. It's been in the top 10. It was #1 off and on Amazon many times since it's been published. It's still running real strong in 3 categories. And it's loosely based on my experiences in Vietnam. It's historical fiction. Characters are all composites, but it's based in fact. I won't digress other than to say that in 1971, early 71, the President Nixon was Vietnamizing the war, and he was turning it over to the Vietnamese to get us out of there. And they've been standing down units all over Vietnam, and we went from were 550,000 people in country down to about 150,000 going into 1971. And I was in the 101st up there near the North Vietnam, the DMZ. And we basically were the last unit to be considered to be pulled out. We act as a buffer zone between the North and the South. And the hill in early February, March, in which this book is based on, most of the book anyway, there was a big invasion into Laos by the Vietnamese, South Vietnamese Army, but they didn't have any helicopters, so they tasked the 101st Helicopter Force to support them. We had something like 680 helicopters all total, and we provided all their air support, reactivated Khe Sanh, built some more bases up in that area, and we got them in and out of Laos for about 2 months. Supposed to run 4 months, this operation called Lam Son 719. It could only run 2 because it became a total disaster. Put about 22,000 South Vietnamese troops scattered inside Laos, pretty deep in, about 60 miles. And the NVA, North Vietnamese, came down, and they had over 65,000 troops attacking these 22,000 troops. It was bloodbath. And it was the last major air operation of the war for the Americans. We lost over 112 helicopters shot down in Laos. Another 450 plus were battle damaged. We lost a lot of air crews over there, a lot of men wounded. So it was a real tough operation, but it's very dramatic. And I'd lived through that. I was very fortunate. And this first book, Chariots, gets into that. And it's told through the protagonist is a fellow by the name of Captain Taylor St. James, TJ. And he survives, but he has a lot of harrowing experiences. So if anyone's familiar with the war, it would be interesting to read the book and get a better perspective from what it was like to actually fly helicopters in and out of these zones. I've had a lot of good feedback since it's been out, and I wrote it in first person present. My hope was that the reader would get into the character and actually become the character at some point. And when they were going in and out of tough situations, they could almost feel his fear and his pain and see guys, having to deal with the stress and stuff. And I think pretty well captured that, and I was very pleased with it. So that was by accident that I got into writing. That's been about 5 years ago. I really enjoyed the experience, though, and of course I wanted to get that story. The old adage, everybody's got at least one story in them. Mm-hmm. Well, that's one story that would have been the one I wanted to get out there. Mm-hmm. And I'd also been told after I did land a publisher and work with them that if you get a book out and it does well, you're probably going to be asked to, what's your next book by your publisher. And that leads me into my next series. I did have some ideas. We ended up signing another contract about 6 months after this book was out and published, Chariots, for a trilogy called Legacy of Honor. And there's 3 books in that trilogy. The first one, I'll talk about each of them a little bit later, but the first one is Legacy of Honor, the Patriarch. It's set in World War I and post-World War I. And book 2 is called The Air Warrior, which came out recently. That's set in World War II, Korea, and the early part of the Cold War. World War I, the protagonist's name is Sam McCormick, and he's a doughboy, an infantryman, fights in France. He survives, comes back. He gets married to a French nurse that he met while he was recovering in France from all his wounds in the Battle of Meuse-Argonne there at the end of the war. And they go on to have a daughter and a son. And in the book, it's just a son, though, Sam. And that's book 2. He goes on into aviation. And he's a bomber pilot, serves with the 8th Air Force in World War II. And about the first half of the book covers World War II. And then when that ends, he gets out, goes back in just before the Korean War because he's called back in. He's what they call a retread. And he serves over there flying B-29s in Korea. And then he stays in SAC, Strategic Air Command, Bomber Command, and has a good career there. But he's involved in a lot of history as Strategic Air Command evolves and the Cold War evolves. He has 3 sons. And book 3 is about them, called The Descendants. And that book, the manuscript, I just turned over to Frank and the publishing team about 2 weeks ago, and we envisioned that one coming out, late into the year, maybe. Probably, I'd like to get them out just before Veterans Day in November. It's a good marketing thing, and since they're all historical military fiction, but I try to stay as close to historical events and pull those in. I just think. I think when someone that reads these books, they're going to get a better appreciation for what these people went through and what they did. But they're also going to get a better perspective on our history. And,
That's good.
Right. That is a good thing.
We have a couple of comments I want to put up, and then we have to take our first break and have a word from our sponsors. But Joe Conchel said, it sounds very interesting, the series, all 3 of them. And Joe Conchel said, great covers in there. They're really, really well beautiful. Together. I especially love the World War II cover. I just love that one. And Marjorie Deering says, terrific book covers, Larry. They are. They're we
were very happy with them. That's, well, as we all know as writers, those are an aspect of the process.
Right.
Yeah, an important one.
Marketing aspect.
So let's take our first break, and
We'll be right
a
back.
whole bunch
Don't
more to
go
talk
away.
about. Don't go away, folks, and see you in a minute.
It's every parent's worst nightmare. Police officer Madison Jackson awakes to discover her baby kidnapped from her crib. Was it revenge for someone she arrested, or something far more sinister? Madison's estranged husband is incarcerated in Supermax. As the second in command of a deadly Mexican cartel, did he issue the order to abduct their daughter? Bye, Baby, Bye, from author Kelly Marshall. Get your copy today.
Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Now comes part 4 in the Jaguar series by retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. In this saga, Brandon, Andrea, and Naja, the Black Jaguar, go deep into the Mato Grosso jungle on a mission to rescue 2 kidnapped children. During their journey, they encounter many dangers, including Yanomami Indians, bent on revenge for the murder of one of their warriors.
Return of the Jaguar is book 4 in the Jaguar series, starting with 2 faces of the Jaguar, the Lost City, and the Jaguar's Quest. All 4 are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other bookseller websites worldwide. Return of the Jaguar is a must-read.
The clock is ticking. Can Gracie uncover the truth?
Philip Pliant is the wealthy opportunist plastics dealer and CEO of Pliant Industries. He's also a master thief, creating a pervasive threat to the manufacturing infrastructure in the Caribbean islands markets. With the cartel as his stealth client, the naive city leaders have been seduced, enabling the production of more than 3-dimensional building materials.
The expected profits are monstrous.
Is the art group, now led by Gracie and the family heirs, strong enough to win against this predator?
Can JJ's cats act on the root cause analysis in time?
Will Gracie be able to squash Pliant and the cartels?
Gracie never considered their lives would hang in the balance. The clock is ticking. 5, 4, 3.
And we're back. Now, for all those listening to the audio podcast, that was for Enigma Tracer by Breakfield and Berkey, available at Amazon. Okay.
Yes. Larry, did you say you wanted to read from one of your books, or did you not want to?
I could take an excerpt from one if you'd like me to.
That would be awesome.
Well, let's see.
Good question.
They're all good, so just close your eyes and point.
I think what I might do is take this one here, the first book in the Legacy, The Patriarch, and it's set in World War I. The first half, that one there, that's the set the stage real quick. The first half is set in the World War I in France and Belgium in the trenches. And the protagonist, Sam McCormick, he survives and comes back to the States, but he's got to deal with all kinds of stuff. I mean, he's got health issues from being gassed and stomach issues, which most of the veterans coming back from that war did have. There was over 4 million men that eventually were sent over there that served in France and Belgium. And then when he comes back, he gets hired on as a steel worker at a local steel plant, and he works his way up into management there on the line, of course. And he has a decent life, but it's hard for him, and he gets involved in some issues nobody's ever heard of unless and there's not many of them left, if any, but what was called the Bonus Army, the Bonus Army March on Washington in 1932 by the World War I veterans. A couple of chapters are dedicated to that, which is the piece of our history which just fascinated me. And then in the early to mid 30s, with the Great Depression still going on and people having a hard time getting a decent pay or getting even jobs, there was a lot of strikes around the country, particularly in the steel industry, what was called the little steel strikes in the Northeast, which is where our concentration of steel places were. And these men that worked in these plants, a lot of them were veterans, and they seemed to bear the brunt a lot of times of the strike busters, if you will, the management trying to stop the strikes from happening or bust them up. And they would pick on the veterans because these are the fellas who could organize themselves, and they didn't like to put up with a lot of stuff. So they tended to be, if you will, de facto leaders, and they were viewed by management as threats. So they were disproportionately targeted during a lot of these strikes. So I tried to capture some of that in the book. But I think what I was going to do here is read from the very first of it. It's chapter 1, and it's called Waiting to Attack. It goes like this. Over the deafening noise, the raging sounds of battle, I hear myself yelling, "Come on, men, you can't live forever. Keep moving, men." The appalling, nauseating smell of blood-soaked dirt and cordite is almost overpowering. Hundreds of us are charging forward with fixed bayonets, shouting, cursing, screaming, and dying. The Germans are dug in on the ridge line above us, throwing hand grenades and pouring murderous rifle and machine gun fire into our ranks. Men are falling all around me as we close in on the German lines. Many Germans climb out of their trenches, leaving the relative security they are afforded, and charge us. Some of our men yell out curses at the enemy. Some call out their mothers, and others just die in silence. Their eyes glaze over and fade out. To my front, a German and American charge each other, leading with their bayonets. They run head on and impel each other through the chest. They stare into each other's eyes momentarily and die standing up, heads hung down as if to say, "I'm sorry for what I've done." We keep moving forward as our ranks continue to shrink. More Germans emerge from the trenches. They have us at a disadvantage and know it. We are fighting for our lives. We can't make our objective. Then we hear the call to retreat and begin the deadly hand-to-hand fight to get back to our trenches. 2 Germans to my right are slashing at one of my men. I rush them and thrust my bayonet into the closest soldier. The other man turns to attack me. I pull my pistol and shoot him. He spins around and drops, but it's too late for my comrade. They showed him no mercy. Enraged, I try to rally what troops are left, standing and fight a retreating action. As we move back, we're stopping over the dead bodies of hundreds of fellow Americans. One of my men, a close friend, is being dragged back toward the German trenches by several soldiers, trying to take him prisoner. My rifle and pistol are out of ammunition. I charge forwards to rescue him. 2 of the enemy turn to face me. I extend my rifle with the bayonet fixed, step into them, both of them, and slash across their necks with all my might. The other Germans release my friend, but club him to death with their rifle butts as he falls. They turn to charge me. Dropping my empty rifle, I desperately look around and grab another lying on the ground near me. Raising it barely in time, I fire, killing one of the Germans as the other continues toward me with his bloody bayonet extended. Before he reaches me, an artillery shell goes off near us. I'm thrown to the ground. The world around me goes dark. I hear voices. See that Padre over there? He's busy picking up things to send back to their next of kin. Watch how carefully and reverently he's removing items from the soldier's pocket. Opening my eyes and looking toward the sounds of the voices, I see a Padre kneel and remove items from the chest pocket of a dead American soldier. Standing near the Padre is a captain and a private. The captain instructs the private to help the Padre. The private kneels and removes some items from the other dead soldier near him. He stands up, looks around at the field of dead and dying, and says, God, I'm glad I'm not in the infantry. They haven't a chance, have they, Captain? Suddenly, I'm awakened from another nightmarish dream by one of my men. That starts the chapter.
Wow.
Wow.
You know,
That's heavy.
my grandfather was a Marine in Haiti in the Banana Wars, and then he fought in France in World War I. And it's hard to think of my grandfather doing that. He was an infantryman, so that's what he would have been doing.
Those fellas had it rough.
Yeah, and it's hard to hear it, actually, but necessary. Joe York said powerful. It is really powerful. And Joe Conjal said, wow, pulls you right in. Yeah, you're there.
I think we forget.
Yeah, and we
all
shouldn't
know
forget.
war
That's
is
the point.
horrible.
Yeah, that's the point. We should not forget.
Right.
You know,
that's why this history is important.
Yeah, and the March on Washington, my grandmother told me about that. But I mean, nothing changes. You know, our vets still today have to fight for their rights to get what they were promised. You know, and I mean, I was shocked when my grandmother told me that, because I thought, well, that was just a Vietnam problem, and no, turns out it's always been a problem. Marjorie Deering said, first person present tense, that's not easy to do. Terrific. I know, I was going to mention that too, Marjorie.
Yeah, that's
that must have been, that must have been very difficult to write that way.
I have written my first 3 books that way.
Mm-hmm.
The Chariots is in first person. The Patriarch is in first person, and the Legacy Aviator is in first person. I wanted to pull the reader right in, get them to identify with the character, and then just let them ride with him through his experiences. And there are many chapters and many parts of all 3 books that are quite powerful. They've all been out long enough now. I get a lot of comments and reviews and feedback, and I've been very pleased with them overall. And it seems like everybody's moved by them and learned something from reading them. My trilogy is loosely based on my family's history. Book 1, the Patriarch. My grandfather was a doughboy infantryman in World War I. I'll digress a minute because this is pretty neat. I dedicate the book to him and the men that served over there. And he and I were real close when I was growing up as a young boy. And off and on through my college days too. His dad was a 30-year career Air Force man. And he was gone a whole lot when we were growing up as young boys. I hardly saw my dad till the 5th grade in grade school. He was always coming and going. And when he would get deployed and couldn't take us, which was quite often in his youth days, he would put us with my grandparents next to where they lived in Louisville, a town outside of Canton, Ohio. And Granddad and I grew close as a result of that. He kind of became a surrogate father, if you will. And in the 5th grade, Dad was in Greenland, and we were there in Louisville. And I was old enough for my granddad, who was a big poker player. Big man, 6'4", built like a lumberjack, steel worker. And he was a member of a group there of about 9 fellas. They were all World War I combat veterans and served in the trenches. I don't know if they ever served together, but they played poker once a month, all night on a Saturday night at the courthouse on the top floor where the rec room was. And almost that whole year that Dad was gone, Granddad would take me with him to his poker game. And I got to know the guys a little bit, and I'd watch them play for a while, and I'd eat their food and so on. And when I get tired, I go lay on the couch over there, and go to sleep, and next morning, Granddad would wake me up, and we walk and get some breakfast, and then go home. But there were some times when I would wake up in the middle of the morning. My back would be to them, but it'd be 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning because I could hear them talking a little bit. And by then, they had been playing cards and drinking a little bit, and they'd be sharing some of their stories. And many people that I've shared this story with thought that, and it's true, they were just helping each other. They didn't have any VA back then. They were just supporting each other, getting stuff out on the table and so on. And so I'd hear some of these stories, and, as a 5th grade, I knew a little bit about soldiering and war, and from what I read and what little I heard. But, as a young boy, you really don't understand all that. You just kind of hear it. And I wouldn't say it was R-rated. I never remember them talking about, the really nasty stuff. I've been asked, how did you get so graphic in some of your scenes in the book, that passage, and some of the others that are in my Patriot book there. That's more from research and documentaries and some of my own experiences and so on. But anyway, I remember some of their stories and was able to embed some of their stories in my storyline. And I thought that a nice little touch to the book, if you will.
Yeah,
cool.
And honored them.
Yes. And
your grandfather.
I did.
Yeah,
he never talked about his experiences, and my dad never did.
No,
just the way they were made.
That's right. Never did. Mine never did. And then when my brother signed up to go to Vietnam, my dad was very upset and said he should have talked about it more.
Yeah.
Because my dad was in World War II. My family's heritage is very similar to yours. It's like they've been military forever, still are. Yeah. My nephew graduated from the Naval Academy and went on to be a helicopter pilot and piloted the helicopters against the Somali pirates.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my middle brother, Tom, he's gone now. He was a Navy pilot, Hilo pilot, 27 and a half years. He retired as a captain. He had flown in the first Gulf War, and he'd flown in some of that, what they called the tanker war, which was before the first Gulf War. So he spent a lot of time in and out of the Middle East.
Yeah. Yeah. My nephew did too. Joe Conjal says, "Hi, Larry. When it comes to the marketing of your books, how involved is your publisher, and how much of it do you handle?" Good question. That's a good question.
I would say that it's somewhat of a shared undertaking, if you will, not really a responsibility of the publishers. But my publisher, Frank, he goes above and beyond. He's really good. Him and his company. So they give me leads. They put stuff out. He's got a network he puts out. Over the years, I've worked with 3 different marketing companies for short contracts that on all 3 cases. Well, first 2 are done. I'm in the middle of my 3rd one now. I'd be glad to share the names of them, but
sure.
I've used them and found that to be a rewarding experience and increased visibility and sales a little bit. Of course, you're paying for that, but in some cases I get a discount because of the publisher and or because of the nature of the book. It's like Chariots is just it has what I call legs. It's really done well in 3 years. So, it's not hard to get it out there since it's been out a while and doing quite well. The Patriarch, the one I read the passage from, has been out about a year now, and it's starting to get some good legs and gotten some really good feedback. And my newest one, the Air Warriors, it's starting to get its legs. It's a little slower. I think some people saw the mini series about the bomber group of World War II. What do they call that? The Air. I remember Steven Spielberg's newest mini series about the bomber group in World War II. Part of that, my 3rd book here, the Air Warrior, is in World War II. It is a bomber group flying out of England, but that's not the whole book at all. That's part of the book, and then it goes into Korea, and then it goes into the Cold War. People that read that book, The Aviator, are going to learn a lot of stuff they probably didn't know about. And I can talk about that after the next break for a few minutes.
And how'd you know? It's
How'd you
time
know
for
it's
the
time for the
next
next
break.
break?
Good for you.
Well, good.
Your clock is working.
There you go. There you go. All righty. So hang in there, everybody. When we come back, we'll definitely be telling you how to get a hold of Larry.
And we can talk more about the
And
books.
talk some more about the book, for sure. Okay.
And marketing.
There you go. Stand by.
An unforgettable mystery thriller that will transport you back to 17th century England. Introducing Dream of Courage, facing fear head-on, your passport to 17th century mystery, mayhem, and murder. Follow Robert and John Rushworth through Leeds' bustling Brigade District, where danger lurks in the shadows, embodied by the thief-taker Jacob Wilding. You will laugh, you will cry, and be in awe of the twists and turns. Its meticulous attention to character development, emotional nuance, and the unfolding of the story's layers promise a compelling and emotionally charged journey. The U.S. National Times said, "Modern writers usually don't know what it was like to live in the past, but Rushworth Brown does this with great skill." Uncover the secrets of Smythe, the enigmatic tavern keeper who sends Robert to the Haven, to the pirate Captain Girlington. Will he outweed danger in the nick of time?
It's 1919, and Eric Laska returns from the war in Europe. Two new enemies await him in the small, coal-mining town he calls home. One is a threat to his relationship with Rebecca, the love of his life. The other, a bloodthirsty beast, is stalking the mining town residents. The townspeople suspect Eric of one of the killings. An old man and Rebecca's 11-year-old sister have seen the beast, but only Eric believes their story. To protect the town and clear his name, he's forced to prove the werewolf exists. Available on Amazon. The Horror Within by Marjorie Swift Doring.
Paradise, my prison. Charlie Flint awakens from a deep sleep and finds himself alone on a tropical beach surrounded by a palm tree jungle and exotic animals. He cannot remember who he is or anything about his life. First, he must find food and build shelter and protect himself from hidden dangers. As his memory gradually returns, it reveals what a very flawed person he is. A man who made too many mistakes, made too many enemies. The implications of the truth are staggering. How did Charlie get there? And will he save himself? Paradise, My Prison is the riveting new suspense thriller from retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. Paradise, My Prison by George Dismukes is available in jacketed hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats worldwide.
And we're back.
Welcome back. Let me tell people where they can reach you. You can reach Larry at his website, and it's larryfreeland.com. So that's easy, LarryFreeland. And, you can find all of his social media there and find everything you need.
And email contact, too.
And his email is there. Yep. If you want to get in touch with him. I think that, you had said that you would like to share some of the names of your marketing people, and I think
I don't know if I answered the fellow's question as well as I could have, but it's kind of in my opinion, it's kind of a shared responsibility as the author and being basically an indie type of a book. It's on you to get out there and do what you can. You can reach out to people. There's all kinds of medium to do that. I've done a lot of podcasts, and I enjoy those, and I think they've been they're a very good marketing tool. But your publisher too, depending on the relationship and what your contract calls for, would work with you because they got a piece of the action too. So a close relationship helps, and if you've developed that, which I feel that I have with my company, I've been very pleased, and so I think we work well together at that. But I have 2 years ago, I used a company out of Texas called PR by the Book, and they have a website called PR by the Book. You'll pay a fee, but they have different categories of things they'll do. for you to help market your book. And I was pleased with how much attention that got over, I think it was a 90-day contract. And then the second company I used, I contracted with out of New York, a marketing firm, and they set me up with 20 interviews, mostly podcasts and some radio stations. And I enjoyed that, and I found that to be pretty helpful. But again, you're paying a fee for that. I'm currently with a 90-day contract, and I'm about in the middle of this one with a firm out of Atlanta called Pavendo, and they have their website out, and I've been working with them. So those are avenues you can approach also.
Which one did you like the best?
That's a tough one. The first two, in both cases, I was quite pleased with and saw results. There was about 9 months between using the second one and the first one.
Mm-hmm.
This one I'm using now, it's been about 9 months since I used the last one. And like I said, we're about midway through, and they're real big into the social media. I mean, they're just bombing Facebook and Instagram and Amazon with, what are the monitoring the categories of your book and what are the buzzwords that'll pull people in and they help come up with markets. I think advertising on Amazon has been pretty productive for me over the life of all 3 books. I'm not into that. Some people can do that and do it for themselves. I'm not into that, but I think advertising on Amazon is probably one, and podcasts. Those are the 2 I think I've gotten the most bang for my buck out of. So I can't really answer. I said, first I've been real pleased with. This one I've been pleased with. We'll see what happens when it finishes and we get on the back end as to how much of a real bump. I'm seeing bumps in volume under this one, so I'm happy about that.
Well, good. That's really good. And you're still working now on the 3rd book.
Well, the 3rd book, I turned over to the publishing company, the manuscript.
Oh, that's right. You said that. You turned it over already. So it should be out by Veterans.
Yeah, by Veterans. I've had a pleasant surprise. Frank, the publisher, we've contracted with a editor, a lady that's edited many #1 best-selling New York books.
New York Times.
Yes, and I'm looking. I've had editors on all of them, which is a critical part of the process as far as I'm concerned. And I'm real excited to see what comes of this. She comes highly recommended and has a pretty long resume. So we'll see what happens there, and I'm looking forward to working with her and Frank and the other part of the team. And Frank has graphic designers he works with that comes up with our books covers.
With your covers.
Yeah, that's always an interesting process.
I was going to ask that if that's where you got your covers was through your publisher.
Yes. Yeah, he has what he calls a mega data sheet, and he's got a bunch of questions, and I give him my thoughts, and if I got some book cover ideas or pictures, I attach them and send them to him. Then he has a coordinator who sends it out to multiple graphic designers to compete for designing the covers. And then when they screen them, we get a whole bunch, and it goes through if you will, a judging contest. And we narrow it down to a couple, then we shoot that out to a whole network of people to see what they think. And then we go with the one that gets the most ratings and we like. And it's been very successful. It's kind of a fun process, really.
I really like this one, The Legacy of Honor, which is in the World War I saga. Mm-hmm. And because you see the doughboy and you see the plane, the biplane coming towards him, and then you see the Eiffel Tower and a woman and a man standing there. It's it's a war book and a love story. I mean, that's what it looks like from that. I could tell that from the cover, which is important.
A lot of women have read. I've had a lot of women read all of my books and been very complimentary. And that particular book, I've had more than one, including my wife, to say, I was reading the book, Larry. I'm sure glad to get out of the trenches and come back home. I just, I know he meets the nurse somewhere in the middle of the war, but still, I'm glad to get out of the trenches and get to the second half of that particular book. But
and that was a French nurse, you said.
Yeah,
And he ends up
French nurse. My protagonist gets hurt more than once, and he ends up meeting her in one of the field hospitals, and they go on to have a relationship to get married.
Yeah, and I also like this very much, but I guess people my age really romanticized the World War II, didn't we? Because we had so many movies that we watched about World War II.
I have found the World War II genre is obviously very popular, and it's very hard to compete. May be the wrong word, but it is hard in there. There's so many books to choose from. It's much more competitive, and I think that's part of the reason it's taken a little longer for this to get some legs. But it's doing better. It's getting closer and closer to being in the top 10 or 20, but still got a little ways to go on that one. But it is more of a competitive genre or storyline, if you will.
Right. And, and there were, like I said, so many movies about World War II. I mean, just so many movies about World War II that we've all watched and enjoyed, I think.
Well, this one, the Air Warrior is loosely based on my father's 30-year career.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the 8th Air Force in England during the war. And when it ended, he came home and he got out for a while and got pulled back in when Korea was started. And then he stayed in SAC and made it a full 30-year career. So I kind of drew a little bit on his experiences and the guys that he worked with and over his life. And I met, because, I was growing up on an air base my whole life. Went off to college and then went in the Army myself for 5 years. So for the first 25 years of my life, I was around military people and veterans from World War I forward.
So that's a lot of research.
Yes. This particular book I wrote it in 3 parts. Part 1 is about World War II. Part 2 is about Korea, and Part 3 is the early stage of the Cold War. If you like, I can read one little couple pages near the end to give a little flavor of this one.
Maximum we have 3 minutes.
We just have 3 minutes. We're almost to the end of the hour.
Okay. Well, in the back part of the book, he's involved. The Korean War speaks for itself, but then you've got the development of SAC that covers that. You got the Cuban Missile Crisis from '62. My father was a full colonel at that point, stationed at Homestead Air Base, and I was in the 10th grade. That was the epicenter of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the last night before Khrushchev backed down, my dad, he lived on the flight line for weeks. We'd just come home to shower and change clothes and go back. And the night before Khrushchev backed down, he came home to see Mom, and my brothers and I were all in bed already. And anyway, he came into my room. I was the oldest, and I heard him come in, but I heard what he told Mom. I was a sneaky guy back then. And he had told her that the next 24 hours, my mom's name was Ann. He called her Annie. So the next 24 hours, we're either going to go to war or the Russians are going to back down. If we go to war, it's going to be a nuclear exchange. And there's nothing I can do for you and the boys. Of course, that didn't sit well, but she knew by then. And I overheard that. And Dad went into my younger brothers, they were asleep and wanted to see him before he went back to the flight line. And then he came into my room. And when he walked in, he was going to do the same thing, come over and give me a kiss on the head and go. And I said, Dad, are we going to die tonight? And that's the title of that particular chapter.
Wow.
Build up to that.
That was a scary time.
That was.
Yeah, I remember.
Incredible.
Do you remember Khrushchev taking his shoe off and pounding it on the desk?
The UN.
The UN, and I watched that, and he said, we will bury your children on Russian soil. Not meaning that they were going to be shipped to Russia, but that he was going to invade the United States and make it Russian territory.
Yeah, it was rough times back then. We were close.
It was, and I think, it might be good for coming generations to hear it from first person as you've written it, as to how really scary it was at that time.
Yeah, because we take a lot of things for granted. Yeah,
Yeah, we do. And, you don't have to live it to appreciate it, but you should appreciate those people who have.
Hear about it. Yeah.
And hopefully, maybe we could someday learn something from our history.
That would be nice.
It would be good.
Right.
The Cuban Missile Crisis was really scary.
It was frightening.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen.
Well, it got worse each day.
Larry,
that chapter, it kind of builds up to that crescendo there.
Yeah.
Each day is another closer to war, if you will, and then that night.
Right.
Terrifying.
Well, hopefully we won't go through that again anytime soon, right?
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Larry. We really
appreciate
hearing about everything and about your books, and hopefully everybody will, grab a copy and enjoy the series as well.
Learn some history.
We'll learn some history too at the same time.
I think you will.
Appreciate your family members.
Right.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to move you over to the side right now. If I can figure out how to do it, you'd think I'd know by now. There we go. Get you over there. All right. And stick with us, Larry, until we come back to you.
Okay.
Paul Hollis says, great show. Thanks, Rob, Joan, and Larry. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul, for hanging in there. And Joe.
I didn't put that up, but there it is.
There.
And Joy York says, great show. Thank you, Joy. Joe Conjal says, super interesting show tonight. Thank you, Larry. And of course, Rob and Joan. Thank you. And Marjorie Daring said, the podcast was even better than the pizza.
Whoa.
Oh, Marjorie, what a nice thing to say. Thank you, Rob, nice. Joan, and Larry. Thanks for being here. It was powerful, wasn't it? Really powerful.
Really was.
Storytelling. Makes you really understand what was going on.
Brings things into focus, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I want to remind everybody, next week at the same time, same place, next week here, we'll have author-director Robert Emery with us again. And don't want to miss it. He's got a new book out. I can't remember. Megastar, I think is the name of it.
Yeah, he's directed a lot of programs that you know.
So, at any rate, you got anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think so.
All right, then I guess until next time.
That's all, folks.
That's all, folks. See ya.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen Gees welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie. And you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DV.com.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com.